Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I get into today's review, do want to mention if you'd like to support the Gaming Gang, we do have a Patreon. You can find that link in the show notes. And if you'd like to hang with the gang over on Discord, we do have an invite to our Discord server, also in the show notes. So today I am going to share my review of Monty Python's Cocurricular Medieval Reenactment program from Crowbar Creative and Exalted Funeral. I will mention I am not going to be referring to this by its whole title throughout this video because it is a mouthful. This is written by Brian Saliba and Craig Schaefer. This 350-page hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $50. It is available now. And of course, if you just want to grab the PDF alone, you can do so over at Exalted Funeral for $30. Having said all that, let's swing out over to the other camera because here I have what I'm going to call Monty Python's role-playing game. A couple of things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Exalted Funeral were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book. I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. Also want to mention over on the Exalted Funeral website, they indicate this is 250 pages. It is not. It is 350 pages. Keep that in mind. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks work very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. I know a lot of folks out there are curious, is this a humor book that's masquerading as a game? Is this just a blatant money grab? Or is this really a role-playing game? And I am going to answer those questions as we flip on through. So I do want to mention to start off with the production quality because it is excellent. Paper stock's nice and thick. The colors pop off the page. This has a stitched binding. So this is going to hold up really nicely at your game table. And the artwork throughout, really, really well done, especially the character art for the NPCs and the bestiary. Love it a lot. So production quality, top notch. The default setting for the game is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So it is taking place in a low fantasy 12th century England for the most part. Now, of course, we've got a lot of NPCs that are from the show or from other movies or created brand new for this game. So keep that in mind. But as far as our default setting, it is a fantasy role-playing game. Now, as far as the game mechanically, it's important to keep in mind you need to have special dice in order to play. So you're still going to use your traditional polyhedral dice, but you also need a D14, a D16, a D18, and a 30-sided die. Now, dice are available from Exalted Funeral. They have two sets. This is the Albatross set, which is all white and also has a white crayon to fill in the numbers, which still makes it all white. I think it's pretty funny. And we do have a more traditional colored set of dice that you can use. Now, I also want to point out that a D18 is not part of a Zaki set of dice. It is not part of a Dungeon Crawl Classics set of dice. So if you are going to play Monty Python's role-playing game and you have Zaki dice, you're still going to need to pick up an 18-sided die or find an app that's going to roll an 18-sided die. And I got to say, that is not something I'm too thrilled with as far as this game. I always rail against games that require you to go out and get a special set of dice just to play their game. Not something I am a fan of. So mechanically, this is a pretty easy role-playing game to wrap your head around, but there's a lot more complexities to this than I was expecting. So this is not something I would consider to be very rules light, especially in regards to the game master, or in this case, head of light entertainment. But what we're looking at as far as the core mechanic, we do have traits. So we do not have attributes. We don't have skills. We have them sort of combined into traits. And we've got a variety of different traits, and they're very broad. And we're going to have two sides to the spectrum, two ends to the spectrum. So for each trait, we have a serious side, we have a silly side. So the higher the die you have for that trait, the closer you are to the serious side. The lower die that you roll for that trait is going to be the silly side. So for your traits, and you will not have every trait. Most player characters have 3 to 5 traits. You will have a set die for these traits. Now, these are going to change because there are various aspects to the game mechanics which will raise or lower the die in that dice chain. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So as far as the various different traits, let's take a peek at some of them here, like animal husbandry, authority, we have glib. Here we go, chastity. So the spectrum. So if you had a D20, that's all the way to the chaste side. If you had a D4, that would be the naughty side. So the highest you can have is D20. Lowest you can have is a D4. So when a player is trying to achieve a deed, and a deed is something that the player states they want to do, and then they say, well, I'm going to use this trait to do that. A player cannot just simply say, oh, I'm going to use my chastity trait to do this. They have to describe what they are doing. It's very important for you to keep that in mind. And it's possible, if they really are convincing in what they're trying to do with the game master might even tell them, hey, you know what? Don't even worry about rolling a die. You succeed. Because there's a concept called intercourse the dice. Yeah, obviously you can replace intercourse with another shorter word, which in essence gives the head of light entertainment the right to just simply disregard dice, right? Intercourse the dice. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. So a deed is something that the player character instigates. So they say they want to do something and they're going to use this trait, or they're responding to something and they're going to use a trait. So that is a deed. And the reason why I mentioned the deeds is because with NPCs and creatures from the bestiary, they're going to say how many successful deeds must be performed to defeat that NPC or that creature. So keep that in mind. Combat's pretty simple as well. Same process. We do have a death track. So you can move closer to death on the death track. And yes, one of the entries is not dead yet. But we also have accoutrements for the different archetypes of characters that they can earn, which are going to give them a bonus to their traits. Now, the bonus is a numerical bonus. It is not going to increase the dice chain for the trait. And it is possible that they'll have accoutrements which will provide a negative modifier to a trait. We also have retainers, hirelings, henchmen for the player characters. Now, when the player characters take damage, they can choose to lose accoutrements and or retainers first before they take physical damage. And yes, it is entirely possible for player characters to get killed in this game. So when you're looking to achieve a deed, when you're trying to succeed at a task, you're going to roll the die associated with your trait. And we have exploding dice, and then we also have essentially critical failures. So if you roll the highest face on that die, you get what's known as struthing. I think that's how it's pronounced, struthing. So what happens is you will take the next die in the chain and you're going to roll that and add that to the total from your first die. And you can continue rolling and continue going up if you continue to roll the highest face on the die. What happens is when, let's say, as an example, you had a D12 and you rolled a 12. Okay, next up is going to be the D14, and you're actually going to move your trait up. So now that trait becomes a D14. The opposite of that is spamming. So if you roll the lowest number on the die, obviously enough, a 1, you're not going to roll any other dice. You're going to automatically fail. But you're also going to get a demerit, and your trait is going to go down 1 on the dice chain. I got to say, really interesting mechanics at work here. I was very, very surprised, pleasantly surprised by this, because I was expecting a super, super light D20 sort of role-playing game, and that is not the case here whatsoever. We do have merits, we have demerits. Once we move into the Head of Light Entertainment section, we'll talk a little bit about those. But to give you an idea, these are the archetypes that we've got that are going to give you a bit of a breakdown about what sort of characters these are, the sort of accoutrements they can have. And we've got some, fairly traditional sort of fantasy characters here. And then we have others like nobles and monarchs, which you don't normally see in a fantasy role-playing game. So we've got the Head of Light Entertainment Handbook, and this is going to give us information about how to run the game, but more importantly, it's going to give us various different heads of light entertainment, because the thing here is the game master is not only taking on the roles of all the various different NPCs and creatures the player characters will encounter, they're also going to take on the personality of a head of light entertainment. And the head of light entertainment in the game can change. They can be fired and be replaced. So each of these heads of light entertainment are going to provide the game master with information about, okay, so what does this head of light entertainment like to see? What do they not like to see? How do they get fired? And we also have the beshreumment tables, because each of the heads of light entertainment are going to have a number of demerits that a player character will receive that will activate a roll on the beshreumment table, which is some sort of a negative aspect that will affect that player character who gained the demerits. Now, of course, we have merits, which are good for characters that they can utilize for buying an additional die when they're trying to perform a deed or task. So once again, keep in mind, the deed is when the player actually initiates the action. A test is when the head of light entertainment calls for a dice roll. So the merits can be spent on adding an additional die or canceling out a demerit. So if the player has merits and they earned demerit, they can actually cancel that out by spending one of their merits. So this is the character artwork I thought was really, really well done. Here with the NPCs, we get information about each of them. What die do they roll in order to achieve what they're looking to do in that encounter with the player characters, as well as how many deeds does it require to defeat them. So we've got this information for the NPCs as well as the entries in the bestiary. And as you can see, we've got characters from the movies as well as the show. And I thought that was just fantastic. We even got some generic NPCs. So really, really nice. Here are some of the monsters, some of the creatures. Very, very cool. So then we're going to wrap up with some quests, which I was very happy to see, because a lot of times with core rule books these days, we'll get the rules and everything, and then we'll be sitting there as a game master wondering, okay, so how do I concoct an adventure? Well, we've got a variety of different quests here for different levels of experience. So we've got some novice quests that are going to be short, single session adventures to get you used to the mechanics of the game. And then we'll actually get into some more detailed ones, which will take up a few pages in length. And they're pretty interesting. Also pretty bizarre because that's what you're expecting to see in a Monty Python role-playing game. But as you can see, the end of the book, we've got quite a few pages devoted to these quests. And we'll wrap up with a player character sheet. We've got some appendices to give us some information at our fingertips. And then we have a nice index, which will come in very, very handy for the players and the head of light entertainment. So that is a peek inside Monty Python's co-curricular medieval reenactment program. Let's head back to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. I've got to say, I was very, very impressed by this game. Very pleasantly surprised as well. Because the reality is, I was expecting a humor book with a role-playing game just kind of tossed in as an afterthought. And that is not the case. It's more the other way around, that it is a game system that has been adapted to cover Monty Python. Pretty wild, I will say that. So I'm very impressed with that aspect. Now, this is being advertised as a rules light game. I don't know if I would go to that extent. Now, for the player's side, pretty easy because, of course, they're just utilizing traits, trying to describe what they're looking to do, rolling their dice, keeping track of their dice chains, their merits, demerits, their accoutrements, their retainers, and so forth. So nothing really outside the norm there. But as a game master, could be really tricky. And the reason why is because most of the time, as a game master, all you're doing is making sure to facilitate the gameplay and take on the roles of the NPCs and monsters and things like that. Well, you're going to do that with this game, but you are also going to have to take on the role of the head of light entertainment. They all have different personalities. They all have different things they want to see in the adventure, things they don't like to see in the adventure. So they can give out merits as well as demerits, and they can be replaced. So it is entirely possible that the game master is going to have to change up the personality that they're presenting as the game master more than once in a single adventure. That might be a pretty tall order for some game masters out there. So as far as it being rules light for the players, yeah, okay, I would go in that direction. Rules light for the game master or head of light entertainment, not really. I do have to say, I don't appreciate the fact that the players, game master, they've got to go and get a special set of dice in order to play this. The D18 is not in a Zaki dice set. It is not in a DCC dice set. You're going to have to go and buy a separate 18-sided die. If you've got the other dice, the D14, D16, D30, or you're going to end up having to get special dice from Exalted Funeral. And that is absolutely not something I like to see in role-playing games. I don't appreciate the fact when a game comes out that the players and game master are required to go out and purchase additional dice in order to play. Just a pet peeve of mine, that's all. But as far as the game itself, as far as this book goes, I like this a lot, even with my complaint about these special dice and saying that it's a pretty tall order for most game masters out there, and I think might be a little too much to ask of some of them. I certainly do recommend Monty Python's co-curricular medieval reenactment program from Crowbar Creative and Exalted Funeral. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give this an 8 out of 10. Even with my quibbles, I really do recommend this, especially if you are a fan of Monty Python and you've watched the series multiple times and seen all the movies. I think this will really be up your alley. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, if you would like to support the Gaming Gang, we do have a Patreon. That link is in the show notes. And be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. There is an invite link also in the show notes. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.